Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me tonight. We're going to be continuing with reading of The Son of My Will. We're going to start. We've read the preface. We're going to read chapter 1. So get your book, get your favorite beverage, and let's start reading in The Son of My Will. Coming right up on In His Will. Hello, everyone. I'm excited about this new little adventure that we're going on together and reading The Son of My Will. The Son of My Will is actually a beautiful um, uh, rendition and biography of Luisa Picaretta's life and explains a lot about Luisa, explains a lot about living in the divine will and how it came about, her childhood, her birth, her childhood, her adolescence. And so we're going to start. Last week we had, I read the foreword, and tonight we're going to do part of chapter 1. I don't want to go too long with these because, your mind can only absorb so much. But I hope that we can go through them and we can talk about them a little bit and certainly put your comments and your questions and whatever you have in the comment section. I love to read your comments. I read all your comments. Most of them I respond to. And so I'm so happy to hear from you and know that you're out there and know that I'm thinking of you and praying for you. And I hope that you're praying for me as well and for the channel because we're trying to reach everyone and bring everyone up in this new higher level of living, this life of living fused in the will of God. So we're going to begin with chapter 1, from birth to adolescence, and we're going to start. If you have the book, it's page 15, and we'll see how far we get in an allotted time. And I don't want to rush through this because it's a lot of great information. So, chapter 1, from birth to adolescence. A life upside down. I love the title to this beginning of this paragraph because, I always say the world is upside down and backwards. And Luisa certainly had her share of upside down in her life. Luisa Picaretta was born in Corrado in the province of Bari on April 23rd, 1865, to Vita Nicola Picaretta and Rosa Tarantini, both from Corrado. The young couple are practicing Catholics. They will have 8 daughters. 2 of them will die just a few days after they are born. Angela will die when she's 10, and Philomena at the age of 20, just 4 months after her marriage. Maria and Rochelle will get married, while Angela, who is named after her deceased sister, will not get married and will live with Luisa even after their parents die, just several days apart in 1907. So we see right from the beginning that there was a lot of tragedy attached to Luisa's early life. Her parents had 8 daughters. 4 of them, 2 died just a few days after birth. Angela, her sister Angela, died at the age of 10. And then Philomena at the age of 20, 4 months after she was married. So from the very beginning, the Picarettas lived with tragedy and hardship. Luisa was born at 10 o'clock in the morning on the first Sunday after Easter, which in 1865 falls on April 23rd. Her father has her baptized the same evening, as is the practice at the time, in the Church of St. Mary Major by the assistant pastor, Father Carlo Loggiadici. Her father's brother, Uncle Joseph, is chosen as her godfather. Now, it's interesting to note here If you didn't catch this, she was born the Sunday after Easter, which we now celebrate as Divine Mercy Sunday. And I say that there are going to be synchronicities and um, uh, connections that we're going to find throughout Louisa's life, particularly with St. Faustina and the Divine Mercy, because I feel like these two things kind of uh, kind of come together in many points. The baby girl, Louisa, was born upside down, a breech birth, but it does not cause the mother an exceptional amount of pain, nor does it have any negative effects on their fifth born child. This fact keeps returning in Louisa's life like a refrain of a song, and sometimes Louisa jokes about it, using it to explain her condition in life, saying she was born upside down. And that explains the reason why her life unfolds the other way around compared to others. Her parents spend the winters in a house in town, while from springtime to autumn, like many other farmers, move to a small farm about 17 miles from Corrado to an area known as, by the locals, as Desperate Tower, and the highest point in the Merge region, which is the region of Italy where they lived. The reason behind this unusual name comes from the fact that the harvest had been poor for many years. So the original name of the area, Golden Valley, is changed to Desperate Tower. The father is a tenant farmer for a wealthy family in town, and he, in turn, has his own workers for working the land. Louisa will remember how her parents were always generous with their workers and how cheating or deceiving them never had a place in their home. Now, one of the things, because I don't know that this was mentioned later on, but one of the things that we know about Louisa living on the farm rather than in town was a hardship for her because being away from town from the spring to the autumn, although her parents were obviously quite pious people, taught their daughters the faith and were very loyal to their faith and very good employees because they were employees of the owner and they employed other workers who they're saying they were very fair to and um, they were generous with the workers. But Louisa, taken away from town out into this kind of remote farm, um, wasn't able to go to mass. And so all this time that they are gone from spring to autumn, she's deprived of the opportunity to uh, to go to mass. And so um, this was really a hardship that she writes about later, I believe, in some letters. Childhood. Louisa's early childhood is spent in a home rich in Christian values. Saying mean things or swearing are never heard at home, and home life is marked by goodness and modesty. Louisa is a very insecure child, and her relatives accuse her of getting frightened over the slightest thing. As an adult, she herself will explain why was so afraid. We know that starting from the time she was 3 years old, she almost always dreamt about the devil who wants to carry her off while she fights back. When she was really young, she runs to take refuge in her mother's arms both day and night. So the evil one came after Louisa very early on. God had great plans for Louisa. And so he formed her from the very, very beginning in a way that he wanted to bring her up and train her, prepare her for this great mission that she was going to have set before her later on in life. When she's a bit older, she squeezes the rosary tight against her chest and she recites many times the Hail Mary and the Our Father in honor of the saints. If she prays in her naivety, she makes a distinction between the two prayers. If she prays to a male saint, she prays the Our Father. If she prays to a female saint, she prays the Hail Mary. Dedicated as she is to reciting so many prayers, while the other children or her sisters are playing, she's quite isolated on her own while she is praying. So the other kids, her sisters, the other children, they're off playing, and Louisa is off by herself praying. Sometimes in her dreams, she sees the Virgin Mary who chases the devil away. And at one point, she invites Luisa to weep with her because her son is dead. She overcomes her fears only at the age of 11 when she joins the Association of the Daughters of Mary at the church of the former Capuchin monastery. The association had come to Corrado recently, and because of its special relationship with Our Lady, Louisa finds the strength to confront her fears. She tells the story that at a certain point she begins to feel the strength in her heart to keep herself from fleeing, and a voice deep in her soul encourages her not to be afraid because she has a guardian angel by her side. Jesus dwells in her heart, and the Heavenly Mother protects her under her mantle. So why should she be afraid? Who is stronger, the guardian angel, Jesus and the Heavenly Mother, or the infernal enemy? So fear gives way to strength, courage, and firmness of purpose. Older now, she asked Jesus in one of her conversations the reason why these things happen. Jesus explains that the devil assails the body with enticements and terrifying dreams because he's unable to make her succumb to impure feelings or thoughts. And this is because Jesus himself is safeguarding her soul. So Jesus was safeguarding her soul from impure things, impure thoughts. And so the evil one wanted to scare her, wanted to direct her thoughts to evil things, to worldly ways, to worldly thoughts, bodily thoughts. And Jesus put a bubble of protection around her. You know, I talk about the bubble of protection. Louisa certainly had the bubble of protection. Besides being afraid, she's also very shy as a child, so much so that she sees herself as someone sacrificed by shame. This is because her embarrassment makes her hide when people come to visit her house. Furthermore, she does not like going out with her family to visit other people. She only leaves the house to go to church, and there she hides in the corner for hours. She does not attend any celebrations or even take part in innocent amusements, despite the fact that she is naturally vivacious and happy. The natural cheerfulness is reflected in a childhood filled with the joys of jumping, running, and even some mischief. Louisa even got into some mischief. She loved playing with her sisters. She loved being at home. She loved doing all the things that children do, but she was extremely shy, extremely uh, prone to sort of isolating herself only within her family, and didn't come out if people visited or they went to visit other people. Louisa would run into the back bedroom and she would hide behind the bed. She really covered herself and didn't want to have anything to do with the visitors. And she asked Jesus about this later, and he said, I was safeguarding you. Jesus was jealous of Louisa. He wanted to keep her for himself. And so he gave her very special graces. And I think this is a powerful lesson for us. Our personalities from the very beginning are formed by the Holy Spirit in order to prepare us for whatever our function, whatever our role, whatever our mission is later on in life. So to, regret or begrudge any of the quirks of our personality would be to kind of say God was wrong. No, he made us this way. However, she regrets that her life is stunted by shame. So one day, she asked Jesus why she's so embarrassed with others, and the Lord replies that it comes from his jealousy for her. He wants to take her away from everyone and everything in order to shape within her the kingdom of the supreme fiat. That is the kingdom of the divine will. So Jesus was deliberately removing her from the company and the influences of everyone around her outside of her immediate family so that he could begin to shape the kingdom of the divine will in her soul, that he could mold her and teach her and prepare her for this great mission that she was going to be called to. When she was enrolled in elementary school, she's able to attend only the first few grades at the School of the Sisters of Charity of the Immaculate Conception of Ivry. Now, remember, Luisa went to school for a short period of time. She had a very, very, very sparse education. The next section is the Lord speaks to her. When she's 9, she receives her first communion and is confirmed the same day. From that moment on, receiving communion became her passion. She pours all of her emotional energy into it, so much so that every time she receives communion, she hears the Lord's voice speaking to her, and she feels mortally sad when she cannot receive Holy Communion. When her family moves to the Merge in the spring for the farming season, her unhappiness intensifies. There is no church there for attending Mass. Looking all around her at God's creation, she praises the Lord. Luisa feels even more the lack of praising God as celebrated in the church. It weighs on her not to be able to receive him, the one whom all things love and praise. She asks nature to talk to her about Jesus. And here we begin to see the rounds forming in the soul of Luisa, the rounds of creation. The trees, the plants, the flowers, all of creation, then seem to tell her all about their creator. One talks about Jesus' beauty, another his love, another about his goodness. It is true that when she meditates, which can last 2 or 3 hours at a time, she sometimes hears the voice of Jesus who, like a good teacher, explains to her the truths of the faith. But being in church is a completely different thing. To console her, Jesus proposes, as a model of behavior, that she live the same life that he himself led in Nazareth. He urges her to keep her eye focused on that house in order to see if her actions correspond to those of the Holy Family where everything was done with love. Usually he suggests that she yearns for a hidden life, and he reassures her, telling her that he himself will guide her with his teaching. But, he adds, much silence and attention are needed. For that reason, when Luisa realizes she is not dedicated enough in praising God, she hears a voice inside that scolds her. It is the Lord who is showing his disappointment with her. So the young girl decides to keep to herself and to be more quiet. She takes up her work and asks her mother to go into the next room. That way her mind is focused on the house of Nazareth, and she feels overwhelmed by the love that reigns there, although she is very aware of her limits. Jesus consoles her, telling that he watches over her and that bit by bit she will reach the same level of love that reigns in that home. Being in contact with the religious women who are her school teachers, the nuns, her desire to become one of them begins to blossom, but her mother is strongly opposed to this desire. In actuality, the real opposition will come from that voice inside of her, which scolds her for her excessive affection for the sisters. Remember, Jesus is very jealous of Luisa. He wants her attention on him. And so she gets scolded for her affection for the sisters. You love the sisters too much. You need to be saving that love for me. One day when the Mother Superior is unable to see her because she's busy, Luisa feels such dejection that it makes her realize how necessary it is to be truly detached from everything and everyone in order to be able to love God alone. Luisa will acknowledge later that she, in fact, loved the nuns very much, but it was the only love of her life, and that later she never felt the same love toward anyone else. In spite of her mother's opposition, she's determined to become a nun. Only the state of her health will prevent her, and when she complains about it to Jesus, He tells her that he is preparing her to be the true little nun of his heart. He reassures her by speaking to her in her own dialect, calling her Monticello, or little nun. Moreover, Jesus teaches her how to love people without ever straying from him by looking at others as created in God's image. In this way, if this person brings about something good in her, she must see that it is God who is the prime author of that good, and that he is using another person to pass it on. If, on the other hand, someone causes her to suffer, she must still see that person as an instrument in the hands of God for her sanctification. As a result, her heart is at ease when dealing with other people, and she does not lose any respect for them. So we see here very, very early on how the Lord is training her, teaching her about love, about uh, worshiping God and praising God in nature, teaches her about love, teaches her about detachment, teaches her about conforming herself to his own will and not giving an excess of love to others, but saving that love for Jesus. And we're going to stop here. As I said, we're going to take these in kind of little short spurts so that we can kind of unpack everything that's in these beautiful pages telling us about the life and how she is formed. And I'd really encourage you, if you have the book, to go back and reread this and really meditate on some of these stages of her life and how Jesus is teaching her and showing her how he has reserved her, preserved herself, her love for himself. So until next time, I say bless you, thank you. Please subscribe. Please like the video. It helps others to hear it. And I know that others could really be edified by learning about the life of Luisa and how she lived and how Jesus formed her, because he's forming each one of us in his own way for our own purpose. So we can learn much here. So until next time, remember to always stay in his will. Bye-bye.